Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot and a member of PMDG's tech team. Today we are talking about diversions, diverting to other airports. And we've just departed Innsbruck, heading towards Hamburg. Now, let's say that we have to divert now. The first thing we've got to consider is how urgent is the diversion? Is it, for example, due to a medical emergency, like a passenger being unwell? Is it for operational requirements, like your airline just wants you to return maybe to the departure airport? Is it because of a non-normal checklist that says land at nearest suitable airport? And all of these are going to lead into some different procedures and decisions. Let's go with the easiest one. Return to the airport of departure. Let's say for whatever reason your airline wants you to return to the departure airport. That is very easily done in the FMC. You go on departures arrival. And we've got Innsbruck up here. Just click arrival on here. Select your route, for example the localizer approach runway 26 with the Rattenberg transition. And you will now see that at the end of our normal route, the arrival transition we have just selected has been inserted into the flight plan. All you would need to do now, once you have coordinated your diversion with ATC, is to take that waypoint, put it on top, and if you execute this, the airplane is fully set up to return to your departure airport. I'm going to erase this now to be able to show you some more examples of what we can do. So if you're returning to the airport of departure, there is something to be aware here. If you're diverting before you have reached your cruising altitude, the cabin pressurization system is going to return the cabin automatically to the airport elevation of your departure airport, and that is going to be indicated by the off-scheduled descent light illuminating. If that happens, it's telling you that the cabin pressurization system is driving the cabin back down to your departure airfield elevation. However, this feature only works if you have not yet reached the cruise level that's been inserted here. So we have 38,000 feet inserted. We're currently at 37,500. If we started the descent immediately, the off-schedule descent light would come on and the cabin would be returned to your departure field elevation. However, let's now look at a second option. Let's take an option that requires a diversion to a nearby airfield that is not your departure airfield. So, for example, a medical emergency with a passenger, or a diversion being necessary because of a non-normal checklist. So, if the non-normal checklist reads land at nearest suitable airport. Be aware that the nearest suitable airport is not necessarily the geographically closest airport. For example, we have Stuttgart right in front of us here, 15 miles ahead, but we're at 38,000 feet, we need to descend the aircraft. So, despite Stuttgart being the nearest airport, and with a 3,000 meter runway also a suitable airport, it is not necessarily the best selection. So, you're at 38,000 feet. A very good trick to determine the range in which airports may lie is press the meters button. Have a look over here. You're at 11,500 meters. Get rid of the last two numbers, so 115. That is approximately the distance you need to land the airplane from this altitude. So any airport within 115 nautical miles would be a suitable airport to go to from this very position. So for example, we have Frankfurt up here, 100 miles away. We have Nuremberg, also 100 miles away. And behind us, we have Munich, Basel, Zurich. All of those are definitely suitable airports. And all of those would be within perfect reach of the altitude we are currently at. Let's say, for example, that we decide to divert to Frankfurt now. Then we go into the route page, click previous page to go back to the route page 1 out of 4. And now simply change your destination. For example, I'm putting Frankfurt in now. And now, on the departure arrivals page, you see Frankfurt. Select your arrival, for example, the ILS approach runway 25 center. Let's take a transition here as well. I happen to know that Charlie VOR is in the south. And now you have it on your legs page once again. You can take Charlie, put it on top in your flight plan, execute this, and now you're going to divert to Frankfurt via the selected approach transition. So let's actually go ahead and do this. Execute. Now it's calculating the VNAV path. It's telling you to reset MCP altitude because we are already above our top of descent. So flight level 230 is set. We press Alt and Event to start the descent. So VNAV Alt changes into VNAV Speed. And now let's catch up with the descent here. So let's go Mach 79, 300 knots of speed. Remember, as I told you, that we had 115 nautical miles. Now Frankfurt is by now just about 80 miles away. In the progress page we can see it's 93. So you've got to keep this up, and you've got to regain this path. So you can see that. Don't just take the nearest airport. Take an airport within a suitable range if an immediate diversion is required, for example, due to a medical emergency with a passenger. Now let's talk about one more thing, and that's a non-normal checklist telling you to divert to the nearest suitable airport. In terms of a non-normal checklist, you have to think about several things. First of all, what is suitable? Of course, any airport having a 3000 meter runway and sufficient rescue and firefighting equipment available is going to be suitable for your Boeing 737. But do you have maintenance available there? Will you be able to repair the airplane, or is it going to be stuck there? So if you have an engine failure, any airport within 427 nautical miles might be a suitable airport for you. 427 nautical miles is the one engine inoperative flight distance of the Boeing 737. For 1 hour of flight time, that is. So, let's assume the same situation. And now let's assume we had an engine failure, which requires the diversion. Would we still have... Would Frankfurt still be the best choice? Or might there be other airports closer? So think about, is there any base of your airline nearby where you can accommodate the passengers and help with their transport? So, let's say we are in a TUI airplane here. TUI Fly Germany. Let's have a look. Are there any TUI bases nearby? Is there maybe even a maintenance base? So that's the kind of information you're looking for when you have a non-normal checklist saying land at nearest suitable airport. If we just look nearby, Frankfurt is a good option. But, for example, TUI has a big maintenance base in Hanover, which is their home airport. So, let's have a quick look. How far is Hanover? That's Echo Delta Delta Victor. We'll just type that in the fixed page. It's 200 miles. That's maybe 40 minutes of flight, 30 minutes. So, why would you now divert to Frankfurt and not Hanover, where you have maintenance available to fix a broken engine? That's the kind of decision making that you need to make when you are going to divert. Finally, the last thing, if you're diverting to an airport that's not part of your route, then always keep in mind to reset the cabin pressure computer. So, as a very quick and easy tool to determine the new alternate airport elevation, look at the runway waypoint, 414 feet over here. Subtract 50 feet from that, because the airplane is always trying to pass the threshold at 50 feet. So subtract 50 from that, giving us 364 feet. So now, don't forget to set the new landing altitude in the cabin pressure computer. 350 in our case. One last thing that I'd like to have a look at is alternate airports for your destination. Well, let's have a look into our flight plan here. We're filed from Innsbruck to Hamburg, and you can see that there is 4 alternates available in our flight plan, from which we may choose. To the very left, we have these C1, 2, 3, 4 readings. This flight plan, by the way, is the Ryanair layout, so other layouts may look different, depending on what you are using. So, C1 means it's the commercially best alternate for the company. Note that commercially best might not necessarily mean the least fuel. For example, here we have our C3, which is Lübeck, which is much closer to Hamburg. But for commercial reasons, for example because the company might not have a base there, it's not as interesting for a diversion as Bremen over here. So you may need a little bit more fuel, but if you have the fuel available, then there is absolutely no reason not to go to the best commercial alternate, of course weather permitting. So also factor that in. For example, if we look at the least best, Westerland Sylt, in this particular case it also uses most fuel. But let's say it didn't. It might use the least fuel, but it's an island. How easy is it going to be for your company to transport the passengers from that island somewhere else? Probably not as easy. So also factor this in when you are planning your diversions. Finally, let's recap what we've just learned in this tutorial. The actual diversion in the 737 itself is easy. If you want to return to your departure airport, go on departure's arrival and just click the arrivals prompt next to your departure airport. Over there you insert your route, and that's all you need to do. If you have not reached your cruise level yet, the cabin pressure computer is going to return the cabin to the departure airfield elevation if the off-scheduled descent light is illuminating. If you have already reached the cruise altitude, or the altitude that's been entered in the flight alt panel over here, then you need to reset the landing altitude to your airfield elevation. If you are diverting to an airport that is not your departure airport, then go into the route page. You might have to click onto the previous page button to return to the route page 1 out of several, and then just enter your new alternate airport as the diversion airport. So for example, like we've did here, we've just entered Frankfurt as new destination, then go to the departures arrival page, select your arrival for Frankfurt, and once again activate that in the FMC. In that case, you definitely need to set the correct landing elevation, and the easy way to get that is from the FMC, looking at the runway waypoint, subtracting 50 feet, and that's the number you're looking for. If you are choosing your diversion airport en route, have a look at the altitude in meters, forget about the last 2 numbers, and that is your mileage, your best mileage to the alternate airport that you should aim to track. So if you're at flight level 380 and you have 115 nautical miles, choose an airport that's roundabout within that distance, and Don't just take the closest airport that you have available. Alright, this shall conclude today's tutorial. I hope that you have enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, please leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'm looking forward to see you all on the next one.